Hello, and welcome to my spoiler review of Aquaman 2, aka Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, where we can really dig into the movie. Where to start? It's kind of all over the place, so let's start with one of your questions from my non-spoiler review. And some of you said that you would like further clarification as to why I gave Aquaman 2 a Rotten Tomato, even though I said it's a fun family adventure movie. Well, as I said in my non-spoiler review, it's the lack of dignity. Also that it doesn't feel anything like a DC movie. I mean, it is Aquaman, but it doesn't feel like a DC movie in universe or even tone. Because, the last one didn't really connect to the greater DC universe, and that was okay. The tone was a little different too, but at least that movie respected itself. This movie, not so much. And since this is the spoiler review, we can go into detail. I can go into detail, and you can go into detail in your comments down below. All right, let's discuss. So I am Iron Man. I can't believe they did that. So in the last official scene of the movie, Aquaman has revealed Atlantis to the world and is holding a press conference at Ellis Island, where at the end, it's a little bit too on the nose. And then at the end of the press conference, just like in Iron Man, Aquaman says, "I am Aquaman," and then walks off, either in a clear reference to the iconic Tony Stark line that Robert Downey Jr. improvised, or a ridiculous coincidence. And based on the smile on Jason Momoa's face, he knew what he was doing. He's making a joke because he thought it was funny, but it's not funny. To end the DCEU with an homage to the line that started the MCU just makes the whole endeavor of the DCEU look more like a joke. Whereas, at least for a little while, it wasn't a joke. The DCEU didn't deserve that. And I don't know what, again, one of DC's problems is that they just give, Marvel's run into rocky territory as well these days, but one of the really clear, just like Marvel should stop hiring Rick and Morty writers, DC should stop letting their talent in front of behind, but particularly in front of the camera, get to do whatever they feel like. Who is in control over there? Apparently still nobody, because Matt Reeves can say he doesn't want to be part of the new universe when Matt Reeves isn't in charge. It's crazy. All right, so as if that wasn't bad enough, they don't stop there, because then there's the post-credit scene. So earlier in the film, like I guess brothers do, Jason Momoa tricks Patrick Wilson into eating a cockroach because Patrick Wilson isn't familiar with any of the food up above. And so Jason Momoa says, "These are the shrimp of land." And considering how gross shrimp look before you break them up and cook them, I can see why Patrick Wilson fell for it. So it was actually somewhat of a clever ruse, even though it was disgusting. But then, Patrick Wilson ate it on the island. So then in the post-credit scene, Patrick Wilson is finally chowing down on a burger and a beer after Jason Momoa couldn't stop talking about how good the food is on land. And boy, was he making me hungry. He was like, "Pizza, nachos." And I was like, "Stop, Jason Momoa. I'm in a movie theater. I can't get to any of this food." And it was all very unhealthy, but delicious. So Patrick Wilson at the restaurant, beautiful restaurant on the ocean, it was really nice, sees a cockroach on the table. So then what kind of restaurant is this? Call the health inspector. And Patrick Wilson decides to eat it. It wasn't even on a plate, man. Like, no matter how, you wouldn't eat a piece of pizza. Like, what is Patrick Wilson, like the Atlantean version of Pizza Rat? You don't eat food off the floor, man. Especially stuff that wasn't served to you. He was a king, damn it. But, so anyway, I think Patrick Wilson ate the cockroach. I know he did, based on the groans from my audience. But I couldn't look. I looked away. It was too gross. So that is the final scene in the DCEU, Patrick Wilson eating a cockroach. And I know that Aquaman was not supposed to be the last movie released. And this wasn't even supposed to be the end credits scene on the movie. It was supposed to feature Batman. And first it was Michael Keaton, and then it was Ben Affleck. And now this is what they're stuck with. But Warner Brothers, they knew this would be the last scene in the DCEU when there was time to fix it. And they still released it. It's a real F you and middle finger to the fans who are still hanging on to this thing. It's like they just tried to just, twist the knife. It's like, uncool, man. Uncool. Now, another question one of you had, I think in jest, but it was, it's valid, is did they ever find the Lost Kingdom? Called like Necros or something. And they do. And it's run by the guy from Game of Thrones, who was on screen for just like a minute before he gets zombified. And to his credit, he took his few minutes on screen very seriously. So I gotta say, just like with the last Aquaman, I thought the VFX here were pretty good. I mean, they don't have the artistic flourish of the first Aquaman movie, but everything is very believable. And there's a lot that you're asked to believe in. From Atlantis to an underwater hidden pirate cove run by Aqua Jabba the Hutt. That was crazy. To an island distorted by pollution. Though, by the way, I must say, when those like evil grasshoppers, and they were grasshoppers because they were hopping all over the place, when they came upon them eating that dead rat, that was pretty cool. I was like, that's dark. I like it. That's what we want from our DC movies. And then also Necros, the haunted evil ruins of Necros, the Lost Kingdom, pulsing with Maleficent-style green energy. I don't know about you, but I love it when stuff glows. I really do. From that green evil energy to Mera's powers. Like every time someone's eyes glowed green because the evil king was possessing them, I was like, that looks great. In the comics, by the way, speaking of Mera's powers, there are other people from Xebel. There's her dad. Her dad never uses the same power set. That makes no sense to me. But hydrokinetic powers are had by multiple characters in the comics and in the cartoons. So I'm just saying, or animation. So I'm just saying, if they didn't want to bring Amber Heard back, they still could have kept her powers around. They didn't have to have her there. But then they would have needed a whole different story because as is, with all this focus on the baby, you can't not have Mera around. And to be honest, the story they have here isn't the greatest. It didn't demand to be told. But there are aspects of it that I enjoyed, like Randall Park. Wow, what a delight to not only bring him back, remember he was just in the end credits scene last time, but to give him such a large role. Usually, by the way, and this is interesting, there's a lot about this movie I found interesting, as you're about to find out. Usually a role like this would be given to an actress. So to have a male character as the kidnapped scientist created a really interesting dynamic. I mean, sometimes when guys are kidnapped scientists, it's just for laughs or they get beat up quickly. But like for a long period of time working with the bad guy, usually that's a lady. But here it was Randall Park. And I liked that. I thought that was a great twist. Right from the beginning, when he and his colleague fell through the ice and they were attacked by that monster, I was like, this is actually pretty good. And I also liked how Randall Park, by the way, would narrate the bad guy missions, like telling them what to do. So it was like a video game where the narrator is telling you what to do. And I was like, oh, that's great. And Randall Park had a great voice and delivery for that. That's one of the areas where it felt very much a little bit like Jumanji. And I liked the moral question that the movie asked. Are Dr. Shin's actions excusable? He did a lot of bad stuff in the movie, but are those actions excusable because Black Manta would have otherwise killed him? And I think up until a point, you could kind of understand it. But when the baby's life was in danger, that's where Dr. Shin drew the line, and he decided to risk his life to try to save the baby. And that was fantastic to explore that moral quandary. And Dr. Shin, it took some time for him to come to that decision. And I was on the edge of my seat when Black Manta was like, hand me the baby. And you're like, Dr. Shin, you're not really going to hand him that baby, are you? I think that crosses the line. And that kind of sophisticated and dark storytelling, again, is what we expect and want from DC. And they could have done more with this, but at least it was there. And I really liked that. I thought that was cool. On that note, I also like that Aquaman came to regret leaving Black Manta's father to die. Well, kind of. He kind of came to regret that. He more kind of came to regret the consequences of his actions. Because basically he saw what it did to Black Manta. It not only created this powerful enemy for Aquaman who was causing him a lot of problems, but it caused Black Manta tremendous pain. And I think maybe after Aquaman almost loses his father and his son in this movie, he understands what Black Manta is feeling even more so. At all. Like, I don't think he got it at first. And of course, I think Aquaman's probably like, the pain that I feel from almost having lost these people is so great, and you actually lost your father? It must be unbearable. So even though he really didn't want to, he didn't want to save either of these dudes, When it came to round 2, he decided to try and save Black Manta from falling into that abyss, Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade style. But Black Manta refused to take his hand because he felt in doing so it would betray his father. Although I think his father would have wanted him to live another day to fight Aquaman. Although he's probably still alive. I mean, it's comic book animation logic. He's the major villain for Aquaman. I'm sure he's fine. But, I thought it was an interesting scene. But it was also very comic booky, so maybe that's one of the reasons I liked it. I've seen this scene so much in comics and animation. Or cartoons. What do you like to call it? I don't know. I think it's funny. I think animation has a little bit more, as we're talking about dignity, but I think Aquaman 2 was more of a cartoon. All right, so I think at this moment would have played better in a comic or a cartoon than it does here. Here in live action, associated with the larger DC brand, I think it came off as a little cheesy. In fact, I believe there was some snickering in my audience at this moment, and I was like, oh, come on, man, Black Manta, they're both dealing with some major heavy feelings here. Cut them some slack. As for the action sequences, I really liked the early one in Atlantis, when Black Manta and his crew, using ancient Atlantean technology, crashed the city. Although at first I was confused. I didn't know that the storage depot for that energy source they were raiding was based in Atlantis. Because when Black Manta says to his second in command, come get us, and then they're driving into the city, I was like, why are they attacking Atlantis? Is this to create like a distraction? So I think that could have been explained a little bit better. For how many reshoots and re-edits this movie went through, it's pretty coherent. I liked that sequence. I not only thought Amber Heard and Nicole Kidman were very well used in it, but I liked getting a very energetic tour of Atlantis, going by very quickly. From seeing the neighborhoods, those two fish people on their date, I liked it. It reminded me a little bit of Monsters, Inc., actually. And seeing that they have water current highways, speaking of Pixar, just like Crush Surfs and Finding Nemo, I got a hoot out of that. And wow, the production design on the ancient Atlantean battleship that Black Manta commandeered. Not only was it very commanding, but I even liked the smaller areas, like Black Manta's quarters down below, and how Randall Park kept trying to find out what was going on in there. I think part of Black Manta wanted to be freed from the evil king's influence because he let Randall Park get away with an awful lot. Randall Park was like looking in there, being like, hey, what are you doing in there? And, Black Manta just closed the door. And although I also liked the line when he said, I don't draw this knife unless it tastes blood, so you better hope I never draw it again. And sure enough, he had to take a little blood from Randall Park because he'd made a promise. That knife had to live up to its reputation. And I thought that was good. And as I said, Jani Zhao was fantastic as Black Manta's second in command. She had great boss energy. I totally believed that all those minions would listen to her. And she reminded me of a lot of great female villain sidekicks through the years, particularly in animation. The ancient pods they were going around in, I thought were also very cool. I liked that they could be used under and above water. And I thought that the scene where Orm was trying to run away from one with the arms keep, trying to get him, I thought that was very well done. And I didn't detect any face replacement there. I think Patrick Wilson really did the running part of that and the reacting part, and it worked really well. I was like, that was a cool sequence. So, the Orichalcum, the Orichalcum, which everyone was laughing at my screening. So it turns out, some of you referenced this in the comments, and I looked it up, and it's true. Orichalcum is actually referenced in real-life ancient writings about Atlantis. It's a lost metal. How cool is that? Maybe somebody made it up, but anyway, it's in real-life writings about the city of Atlantis. So I wish they'd made that clear somehow in the movie because it makes the whole thing less ridiculous. Maybe if Dr. Shin had first, did Dr. Shin first bring it up? But maybe Dr. Shin could have given a little bit of backstory. It does seem kind of like vibranium. I was referencing unobtainium from Avatar, but it's also like vibranium. And then with Atlantis at the end asking to join the United Nations, I was getting some strong Black Panther Wakanda vibes as well. I was like, Aquaman, you gotta be your own thing. But back to Orichalcum. I've read a lot of comics and I've watched a lot of cartoons/animation, so I didn't have a problem with it. This ain't my first rodeo. I've come across a lot of Orichalcum stuff, as I just talked about. I've already referenced vibranium and unobtainium. And so as I said in my non-spoiler review, I also understood that they were trying to call out toxic energy sources without getting into a fight, like a legal battle, like you could say it was slander, with any real-life energy companies. Warner Brothers Discovery is having enough problems. Some of them of their own making, many of them of their own making. But this would be of their own making as well. So I think this was actually the right call. I just would have set it up better. And then when Dr. Shin was horrified by how much they'd melted the polar ice caps to reach the buried lost kingdom, I mean, there was like a blood sacrifice that they had to do for the final step, which is why they needed the baby. But then they just punched Aquaman in the face, and then there was some blood that went flying, and that's how they actually unlocked it. But anyway, Black Manta said with the melting of the ice caps, they'd only fast forwarded what humanity was doing already, and that made an impression on me. I liked it. And I think it could have been set up better so that it hit a little harder. Also, if the polar ice caps melted that much in just 5 months, I think there would be some more serious repercussions on Earth. I mean, they referenced them, but they were either off camera or just in news footage. And if this movie took itself more seriously, I think they'd have included some really cool disaster scenes. Give the movie that Roland Emmerich vibe, right? Some of those movies are pretty good. I loved 2012. And so to add some scenes like that to this movie, where Aquaman would be very helpful. Aquaman and his power set would be they did the old, at the beginning of the movie, they did the old, freighter ship is under attack thing. Although it was funny when they cut it with Aquaman reenacting it with action figures for his baby. And then I thought it was cute when the crew was like, yay, Aquaman. It was like so funny. It was very kiddie. But I thought it was cute. The dreaded cute. But I mean it was cute. But it would have been better to have some natural disasters that were being caused by what Black Manta was doing and have Aquaman help out there. Because that's where he would really, Superman could help, but what's Batman going to do in that situation? That's Aquaman's chance to shine. Now, the more I think about it, the more I think that's a huge missed opportunity. That should have been the pitch for Aquaman movie. 2012, but with some dude running around in the middle of it helping people out. Oh, and I also liked the sequence of Aquaman breaking Orm out of prison. It was a classic breakout scene, down to the description of what everything was in there, like Ocean's 11 when they're like, here's the prison or the vault. But here, it was Aquaman-y because they had an assist from an octopus, aka Topo. As I also said in my non-spoiler review, you can watch really cool videos of octopus or octopi solving puzzles and figuring out how to sneak into places. There was this one octopus, they were like, how's he getting the food in the other tank? Or maybe they wanted to see if he could, but he was going through the tiniest little tubes to get it overnight. And I thought that was incredible. So I totally buy an octopus as a secret field agent for Atlantis. So if they had given Topo more personality and kept him around longer, I think that might have actually worked. Also, why couldn't he talk? I guess, should they have ever crossed that line? Aquaman could talk to animal, to water, to marine life, water animals. So scientific, but we never hear any of it. Should they have allowed these fishies to have voices? I don't know. This movie's so silly, they might as well have. I'd be like, this movie is nuts. Give Topo a voice. If Martin Short wanted to voice somebody, why wasn't it Topo? All right, so also while it was totally predictable, I thought it was cool to see the Steve Rogers skinny version of Orm struggling to get to the ocean as he was being chased by, he was almost escaped, and he was being chased by the guards of his prison. And then at the last minute, it looks like he's not going to make it, but then the surf comes in and overcomes him. And then he emerges as Captain America Steve Rogers, all buff. And I thought that was cool. The water crashing over him, I was like, I liked it. Again, you totally saw where it was going, but they did it really well. Anything else of note? Well, I thought it was funny when Black Manta scolded Aquaman for not only taking Orm's throne, but also his woman. Very social media. I liked that. My audience laughed at that. I laughed at that. It was funny. I thought it was cute that Aquaman's baby could talk to fish, goldfish. I used to own some goldfish, so I related to that. But then at the end, the baby uses that power to get Aquaman's attention. I thought the baby would call in some marine life to help him, some baby marine life. It'd be really cute. All these little cute creatures would just, swarm on Black Manta, and it would be funny. Also, if we're going to go for it, let's go for it. Also, how did the sonar from the whales take out the sonar cannons of the ancient Atlantean ship, which ran on electricity? I was like, electricity and metal versus whales? I've never seen a whale take out a ship, right? I think the whaling industry situation would have gone down a whole lot different if this was possible. Maybe someone in the comments will be like, well, actually, Grace, but they should have then explained it better. Although when the ship's cannons exploded, or imploded actually, which was interesting, they seemed to have the fireball fill the entire inside of the ship, which means Black Manta's entire crew was killed, including his second in command? Damn! I was like, I don't think anyone survived that. That was pretty, I guess Aquaman didn't totally learn his lesson about killing his villains. And of course, another great Orm moment, as I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, was when he almost went bad again, or at least they teased you that he might. So King Nerys, who again never uses the Xebel hydrotelekinesis powers, he felt he couldn't trust Orm. He wouldn't give him a gun. Why were they all taking one gun at a time? I was like, this is the slowest army to deploy I've ever seen. The king doesn't have to hand each of you a gun. Run up and grab them. I like the way the turnstile worked, but I wish that it had been like 10 or 12 or 20 guns at a time, and then it reloaded for the next round of people to take their weapons. All right, so anyway, King Nerys gets in trouble, and he's going to die if Orm doesn't help him. And Orm just looks at him and smiles. And that was delicious. I wrote fantastic in my notes, but it's actually delicious. Loved it. And shows what a great dynamic actor Patrick Wilson is, and how a lot of his talents are not being utilized by this movie. So, but anyway, yeah, of course, Orm decides to save King Nerys, and then he gives him a gun, and you're like, all right, whatever, so boring. Although, I mean, again, I like 2/3 of the movie I thought were fun. Although at the end, this is another moment I liked. When Orm, now possessed by the last kingdom's evil king, like Black Manta was, refuses to let Aquaman have the black trident. And the spirit of the evil king is whispering in both their ears. They're like in some evil green tornado. And the evil king is playing into the difficulties of their relationship, the fears they have, and the fears and hatred that they have of each other. But in the end, they both remember the promise they made to their mother to look after each other. Good thing she made them promise. And I thought Aquaman at that moment would tell Orm he loved him. But it wasn't earned, so I'm glad instead Aquaman said to Orm, let go. And of course that has multiple meanings because there's so much that Orm has to let go of. And Orm takes a beat, looks at his brother, and lets go. And I was like, that's beautiful, man. I also thought it was incredible so then Aquaman throws the black trident at the evil king, and the evil king caught it. And I was like, uh-oh, how much longer is this movie? I kind of respected that the villain wasn't so easy to take out, the boss level villain. But also at the same time, I was like, how much more do we have to go? And then, who is it? Dr. Shin? No, I think it was Dr. Shin. He threw Aquaman his gold trident, and gold apparently, defeats the black trident, and it was like one of those, like a dart, or like those thing where or a bullet when one goes through the other, and he killed the evil king with his gold trident. Everybody seemed to have a trident. At the end, Orm had a trident for King Nerys, and I was like, you guys can't all have tridents because it makes them less special. All right, but yeah, I thought, the movie has a lot of nice moments in it. They said too bad Orm was killed in the final battle, and then he had to go and be banished to the surface world. I'm sure he can swim in some little pools here and there. That's funny. They have some material for a third movie, but it ain't never gonna happen. One of you was like, Grace, this is the middle chapter. And it's like, who's gonna tell him? Who's gonna tell him it's not the middle chapter? But yeah, the movie is full of nice moments, but as a whole, it has no dignity. Really, no dignity whatsoever. It's embarrassing itself. And also, it didn't feel like a DC movie. So that's why it's right on the line, but that's why I decided to go with a Rotten Tomato. And so I hope you now better understand why I made that choice. So what did you think of the movie? Again, this is the spoiler review, so let's hear it in the comments down below. Thank you for going over the movie with me. And again, I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.